Ohio State, Indiana. It's the biggest game in all of college football. All eyeballs in America were glued on what was going on at the shoe. Noon kickoff, much to the dismay and the chagrin of Ohio State fans. And our conversation all week was really dominated by, okay, well, what happens if Indiana loses? How does Indiana lose? If it's a close loss, how does the committee look at that? If it's a blowout, how does the committee look at that? It was the latter. It was a blowout loss, 38-15. Ohio State takes this one. And it really kind of felt like a 31-7 game because there were some garbage time scores late in that game, but it was a close game in the first half. Indiana had, the dropped snap. The punter dropped the snap before halftime. Ohio State got the ball at like the 10. They were able to make it 14-7 at halftime. And then Ohio State outscored Indiana, what was it, like 21-7 in the second half. Ohio State just absolutely pulled away. There's so many ways that we can look at this game. I think the most important conversation, though, is what Indiana did against Ohio State and how the committee is going to view what Indiana did, or really what they didn't do against Ohio State.
Look, I fully expect, even in a chaotic day, a free fall for Indiana from the College Football Playoff Committee. And part of the reason is, yes, I hear you that it was a close game in the first half, but was it? Indiana moved the ball well on their first drive. And then the vaunted offense that we've heard so much about this year didn't move the ball the rest of the game. And frankly, there were a couple of stupid plays by Ohio State that kept them from scoring in the first half. They had a couple of trips to the red zone they didn't get anything out of. This game could have been a bloodbath at halftime. And they pointed that out on the broadcast. Like, hey, this is only a couple of plays away from getting out of hand. And I saw, again, social media at the time reacting, saying, well, it's favoritism. No, this game was just teetering on the brink of blowout. And then all of a sudden it happened. To me, Indiana right now, when you came into the game with the 106th ranked schedule, you had to show the world that nothing about what you did has been a fluke. That didn't happen. I mean, this is now 2 weeks in a row. They played a terrible Michigan team, and their offense didn't look nearly as good as we're used to seeing against, again, let me say loudly, a terrible Michigan team. And then they go into Ohio State. I don't think they had to win this game. I don't think they even had to be that close. I think they had to be close going into the fourth quarter in a game that really felt like it was on the edge of being, it could go either way. Instead, this thing felt like Indiana was hanging on for dear life from the outset to me. If I'm on the committee, I'm sitting here saying, hey, what we just learned is Indiana can't compete at that level. I truly think even with all the chaos ahead of them, I would be stunned if Indiana's not sitting at 15-16 in this week's.
There were so many moments in that game where I was sitting on the couch watching on TV, yelling at my TV saying, you can't win games like this doing that. You cannot win games against the number 2 team in the country in their own house with a bid to the college football playoff on the line and drop a snap and give Ohio State the ball within the 10. You cannot give up a kick return touchdown or a kickoff touchdown, the opening of the second half to Caleb Downs and let him find the end zone. Now, all of a sudden, you're down 2 touchdowns and you're looking around like our special teams just gave up 14 points. You can't win football games like that. You cannot be down for the entirety of the second half and run the football 41 times to just 18 pass plays. You're not going to dig yourself out of a deficit or even win games playing football like that. That I just felt like Indiana had such a formula for winning football games all season long, and a lot of that is just playing sound football. And we just didn't see that today. And what we talked about last week on the podcast, I see all the stats. I see how great Indiana's run defense is, how tough and physical they are up front. I see how Curtis Rourke is able to move the football. I see how balanced they are and how balanced they want to be offensively. But however you want to put it, overall, Ohio State is just bigger, and they are better, and they are faster. They're better athletes. Overall, that just kind of felt like it was inevitable at some point. Although it was close in the first half, although Indiana was able to hold Ohio State to just 1 touchdown for a majority of the first half, it felt like the dam was going to break at some point. And once Caleb Downs found the house, that's really what felt like, the floodgates were opening.
I mean, think about just some of the numbers on this. And I know numbers can get a little overwhelming, but win probability is part of how game control is. That's one of the metrics the committee considers is game control. I looked back at the win probability. There was only one drive in the whole game where they gave any win probability percentage to Indiana, and it was 51.4%. The rest of the game, all of the win probability percentage went to Ohio State, which shows you that the advanced analytics thought that, frankly, this game wasn't close. Curtis Rourke was 8 for 18 for 68 yards. Indiana ran the ball for an average of 2 yards a carry. 2 yards a carry. All right. So, and then you got Will Howard over here, who wasn't supposed to be the reason that Ohio State wins. And Will Howard goes 22 and 26 for 201 in a particularly efficient game. Like, Ohio State didn't really win this game by simply dominating the ground, which is what I thought was going to have to happen. Ohio State won this game by simply being clearly, like from the eye test, clearly bigger, faster, stronger, better in every phase of football. And that, how do you get that out of your head? Because at some point when you're looking at the top 12 teams, do you really want to put a team into the playoff that the one time you've seen them against a true playoff caliber team, it was clear simply watching the game that they were not big enough, strong enough to be able to compete at that level? You can't put that team in the playoff with a clear conscience because you're sending them to get slaughtered.
If I was on the college football playoff committee and it was as simple as, is Indiana in the college football playoff, yes or no, I have to say no. And of course, that's dependent of all the other chaos that's going on around college football.
Yeah, they got some help. They got some help today. Let's be honest.
They got a lot of help. And if that's how they get in, then it'll be from the help that they get around them and not from their own merit. When you have, the 110th, 113th, 100 and whatever ranked strength of schedule, and you've beat up on 6 of the bottom 8 teams in your conference, and you play a 7th next week in Purdue. And look, you shouldn't get punished necessarily because it's not like you make your schedule. All you have to do is beat the teams on your schedule, but you also don't get rewarded for playing, I'll say it, a cupcake schedule. So I would have to say no, because Indiana simply has not proven to me that they are one of the 12 best teams in the country. And everybody wants to talk about brand bias. Everybody wants to talk about, oh, you're just an SEC home or you're an ACC home or whatever it might be. That's not what it's about. It's not about brand. It's not about conference. It's about the fact that Indiana has not played anybody. And it's one thing to look great against bad opponents. We saw that from Indiana all season long. Probably with the exception of the Michigan game. Wasn't a great game, but they found a way to win. But when you play one of the best teams in the country and you look like that, you put up 150 yards of offense, I'm sorry. You don't get to play for a national championship. You haven't deserved it.
Yeah, and look, as I've said a million times, I will remind the world, I don't have a favorite college football team. That's why I love covering this sport. I don't give a damn who wins every Saturday. I want total chaos. Like today was my euphoria because everybody's mad, right? And that's what I love. I love it when everybody's just lathered up over college football. That's all I care about. But to your point, you got Notre Dame out there playing the 85th ranked schedule. So what did we say coming into this game? Notre Dame was going to have to absolutely destroy Army, I thought, from the outset to just eliminate any questions. What did they do? They came in and absolutely destroyed Army. Like there are certain things you have to do. And if you are a team, for example, like Notre Dame with an inexcusable loss on your schedule, you lose all wiggle room. You better be so dominant against a team that the committee says is a top 20 team that you leave no question, right? That we can talk about that all day long. The difference is against that top 25 team, Notre Dame looked like they were in a complete different class. They looked like the team bigger, stronger, faster in every possible way than Army. And they remind you, oh yeah, no, that loss was a fluke. There's no opportunity for Indiana to show everybody that today was just a bad day. All we're going to have in our minds is that, well, Indiana finally played somebody and they got their asses kicked. And that's real. Like, that's what they left. That's the product they put on tape. The tape doesn't lie. And today the tape showed that Indiana is not capable of competing with Ohio State. And if they're not capable of competing with Ohio State, how are they capable of competing with Oregon? How are they? And if you're in the college football playoff committee, how can you possibly think that they're capable of competing with Texas? I mean, you go up and down the list here. All of these teams have had a fatal flaw, but they've at least shown you something against a real opponent that you can hang your hat on. We haven't seen that from Indiana.
I think every team has a different margin for error. Indiana's
fair.
margin for error was just so much smaller than the rest of the field because their schedule was significantly easier. Even the team that you just named, Texas, and we have plenty of time to get into this. I want to focus on Saturday, but if Texas loses to Texas A&M next week, I do not think that Texas has a resume that's strong enough to get into the college football playoff. Now, they still probably would, just given, again, all of the chaos that ensued this week and probably will continue to ensue next week. But Texas doesn't have a quality win. Texas's best win is on the road, a 3-point win over Vanderbilt. The one good quality team that the College Football Playoff Committee has said, yes, this is a good team, we value this as a good win, was Georgia. And Texas looked terrible against Georgia. So I think that that would be a fair argument to make is Texas with 2 losses if they lose to Texas A&M at Kyle Field next week. Are they a strong enough team to get into the college football playoff? These margins for error, margin for error, that's what it is.
Yeah,
they
we'll go
exist for every team. It's not just Indiana. It's not just Notre Dame. It's any team in any conference, and those margins just look different based on strength of schedule and the way that you beat up on teams.
I mean, if one of the games we're going to get to, if Penn State had lost today, I don't know that I could say that they were a shoo-in for the college football playoff because the resume just isn't there. And we keep joking that the best
thing on the resume is a loss to Ohio State.
100%. So like this is just why you can't necessarily apply a universal property to all of this. Like Indiana knew coming into it, they had to know as a program, everybody involved had to know you get your ass kicked in this game, you're hanging on for dear life. And even though there's total chaos above them, man, I'll be really interested to see what the committee thinks of and I know fans are going to freak out, but a 1-loss Indiana team is going to be valued less than some of these 3-loss teams out there. It's just going to happen now. And there's nothing that's going to change that because the wins just don't have the power behind them for Indiana.